Good afternoon, cinema people. My name is Robert Newman, and today I'm going to be giving you a very brief class on The Godfather. Now, I'm almost kind of ashamed to admit that, this past week is the first time that I've seen The Godfather, but at the same time, I'm very grateful for it for this project because, it's a 3 hour long movie, and so there's a lot to talk about. So, some of the keynotes about the movie, it's a classic mobster film. We've seen mobster films throughout this class, like On the Waterfront, but this film stars Al Pacino, and in On the Waterfront, it also stars the great Marlon Brando. Now, this film was actually a breakout role for Al Pacino, who plays Michael in the film. And before this film, Al Pacino really he wasn't noticed by a lot of directors or producers or anything like that. So this film actually was his big chance and kind of like skyrocketed his career after this because he, of course, goes on to star in, The Godfather 2, Godfather 3, the whole franchise. And it was a very successful franchise. And then later, he'll go on into his own mobster film, as Tony Montana in Scarface, which is another great film. So it really helped his career. And then, of course, like I said, you have Marlon Brando, who in The Waterfront, kind of in the mob, opposed to the mob. So it's a really different, all around different character than in this film where he's, the head of the mob. And that's what I think does really well. The thing that's really well done in this film, as opposed to On the Waterfront, and it's a very great idea, is the fact that this film is all about perspective. So in On the Waterfront, you don't see the inner workings of the mob. You don't see you don't see the narrative through the mob's eyes. So basically, all you see is, the mob is bad to the people, the mob is bad to the church, ergo, the mob is bad, which, rightfully so. You see the things that they do, and of course, they're bad people. But what this film does is it really puts you behind the driver's seat of the mob. So you see all of those inner workings, and basically, like, you see the good and the bad, really. And so it kind of allows you to sympathize with the mob if that's possible. So, because you really, like, you see a lot of this is like, they're kind of like a honor bound society to where, famous line, it's not personal, it's business. So, like, I mean, they're not bad people, it's just business. They're not doing anything wrong. So, they're not killing a guy. I mean, they gave him the choice, they gave him an offer he can't refuse. So, I mean, you really see all these things and like how it kind of twists the sense of morality, I guess, about how they're not really bad people, which is great idea. And then on top of that, the filming technique shown throughout the movie, it's very awesome and like completely uh, ironic is that I watched American Psycho after watching this film, which is another film which, The Godfather really does a great job at portraying something, you know, on camera while having like inner workings going in the background. So it's like constant like panning back and forth between shots. American Psycho does that great, but in this film, because at the very opening scene, it does this where it has, a character doing a monologue, and he's just talking, and you're like, okay, where's this going? And then it's almost like a branching dialogue, like to where, something's happening, but you don't know what it is, but you have this branching dialogue, and then once it comes back together, you really get like the full picture. Because he's doing this inner monologue, and you're like, what is he doing? And then next thing you know, you see Vito Corleone like roll around in his chair, and you're like, oh, okay, that's the Godfather. And so it's really cool. And then of the ending, or not the ending scene, but towards the end, it's really done well. When basically, Michael's at the baptism, and he's saying how like he believes in God, he disavows Satan and all this stuff. Meanwhile, in the background, it has basically like his sanctioned assassinations going on in the background. It keeps panning between these shots, and then it comes together, and you're like, okay, Michael's turned into a bad dude, or a good dude to his family, but a bad dude in general. And so it's really awesome film technique. I loved it. Some things about the musical score, which were pretty interesting because there was only one original song for this film, and the rest were just were just like basic classical and jazz, like soundtracks, basically. But honestly, the cool thing is, so this film was nominated for a Grammy, I believe, for a best original score, and then later, that was a few years later, that was redacted, and because apparently the person who wrote the score for this movie uh, used some of the same score that he used in a previous movie, so it was redacted. But then, later they go and they win, best original score in Godfather 2. So it's pretty cool. Um, see some other awards that they won. They actually won. They were nominated in 11 categories for the Oscars. Marlon Brando won Best Actor. It was awarded Best Screen Adaptation or Screenplay Adaptation, and what else? Best Picture, and it won 5 out of the 7 Golden Globes. So it was very successful movie, and then that would carry on later throughout the franchise. Was very successful. Which was interesting to note that Marlon Brando won Best Actor in this film because he almost didn't get the role. And I know you're thinking like, what is The Godfather without Marlon Brando? Because he makes the character. Um, but apparently, like later in his career, towards this film, he was a real handful to work with producers and directors and stuff. So the producers were basically saying, he causes too many delays in production, so he's not going to be in this film. So really, the only way he got this role was, there were strict contingencies. So like one, he had to take a significant pay cut in what he normally makes in a film. He also had to take financial responsibility for any delays that he would cause during production. And then the last thing I believe was he had to do a screen test, which was, I mean, that's unheard of for an actor of his caliber, especially at this stage in his career. You don't do screen tests. But so it's really very interesting to think that, he almost didn't get the part. And then another interesting thing about him as this character is honestly, when first looking at the film, you know, or when it first shows Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando, I'm like, that's not Marlon Brando. But so to get, I guess, the correct voice and the correct like facial features that he wanted for this character, he stuffed his cheeks with cotton balls, which was very interesting. I honestly didn't know it. My wife pointed it out, and then I later researched it and stuff. But I was like, why would you shove your mouth full of cotton balls for a role? But I mean, I guess that's the lengths he'll go for to get what he wants as a method actor. But it was very interesting. And what else? I believe that's it.